Over the past few weeks, without a question, Senate President Jesus Cordero has turned into what some would see as the most hated politician in the country, or at the very least, the most mocked politician, as far as memes and online berating by netizens is concerned. The reason is simple. Whether you call it dribbling or ping pong, the Senate President has really not been clear about the status of the Senate impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte. Although he initially pushed back against the dismissal of the trial altogether, his subsequent actions actually raised even more confusion about the real status of the impeachment complaint. He remanded it back to the Congress, but still maintained jurisdiction over the trial. He has called on the Supreme Court or suggested that the Supreme Court might perhaps resolve the problem or questions about the trial itself. While at the same time, he has also maintained that the Senate has the ultimate prerogative. He has maintained that the House of Representatives and the Senate are co-equal branches of the state, and at the same time, he denied that the House of Representatives is actually co-equal when it comes to matters of impeachment trial. In short, the Senate President seems to have been trying to survive politically given the fluid alignments and alliances within the Senate rather than giving a definitive answer. In many ways, he has been kicking the can down the road and perhaps hoping that the 20th Congress, from his perspective, under a fresh mandate, could better deliver on this issue. And perhaps he's wishing that he has done good enough, whether in terms of delaying or keeping the fire going, to remain as the Senate President. Nevertheless, Jesus Cordero's extremely controversial handling of the Senate impeachment trial has raised fears of constitutional crisis, if not growing temptation about people power or extra constitutional responses by enraged sections of the civil society and public. By all indications, however, it looks like some kind of a trial will happen soon. And as far as the incoming Senate is concerned, it's going to be polarizing, it's going to be interesting, but it looks like a lot of new senators, including Senator Tulfo, and returning senators like Senator Soto and Lacson seem more than interested to push ahead with the trial. So the coming weeks will be crucial, not only for the political fate of the Dutertes and the Vice President in particular, but also for Philippine democracy. To better understand what is at stake and what is the state of Philippine democracy, we have special guests.
Thank you very much, Dean, for joining us.
Sure.
And of course, Dr. Sherwin,
always.
as always,
Thank you,
since
Richard.
last time we met, and thank you for also joining us, Dr. Ona, here. Ang dami nangyari. Let's first start with your post-mortem analysis of the election, because it seems there was some gap between the overwhelming success that was expected for the admin and the result that came out. Nevertheless, the other side of the story is that it's not like it was a clear victory for the Duterte side. They didn't win the Congress. Much of the LGU still went to admin. And then dun sa, like in a country with no real political parties, can you really say where senators will stand at the end of the day, whether they're under this tag or that tag? So what is your read of this, some would say mixed or some would say surprising election result?
Well, personally, I was flabbergasted with the result of this election, and definitely from the side, for example, of the Alianza and the Duterte, I think the winner here are the voters, particularly the so-called millennials and the Gen Z.
Yeah.
No? Of course, we still crunching some data, but our experience in the past, for instance, when we conducted our voters education program,
Right.
we really took notice how the students, when we presented the result of the survey, they are really dismayed. On the top 1 to 11, they're only happy with the 12 and 13, which at that time, it was Bam Aquino and Kiko Pangilinan.
Interesting.
So this is something that we have to also recognize. No? That's really the millennial voters and the Gen Z voters who are the winners of this election. And of course, it's very surprising as well, like Akbayan, who managed to secure being the top spot party list and garnering the highest party list vote in the history
of party list.
party list since it was introduced in 1998. So, yan yung mga significant. Of course, I will definitely attribute that with the work of Akbayan Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Children.
And of course, children.
Children,
Definitely. But more than that, if you will, when we asked some Akbayan members, for example, no, they also captured ordinary workers who believe, no, in the platform of Akbayan, not necessarily the personalities behind that. And of course, my assertion also is that, no, Representative Toby Tiangco didn't really step out and, supposed to be play as the campaign manager. No? He failed to maximize all the potential resources, the big names that they have in Alianza, no, to generate the votes. On the other hand, pwede mo kritikan dito na I think yung Malacanang failed also to weaponize yung issues against other candidates. Like, for example, no, itong sa West Philippine Sea, we know that, yung malang information that we experienced. No? And of course, yung sa ICC, di ba, parang takot nila i-discuss yan in public. And these are issues of accountability, human rights, no?
So you're saying the campaign manager should have whipped the candidates to like toe the line?
Well,
Because the
definitely.
president, in fairness to him, he set down the predicate in his Lawag speech in February. He was very clear. Whether Farmali, West Philippine Sea, lahat minention niya.
Yun nga, yun nga yung problema
Pero walang follow-through.
Tapos yung impeachment niya, di ba? Would you imagine even the son of the president, no, endorsed one of the impeachment
First to
complaints.
sign or
Yeah.
something?
No, even endorsed yung fourth impeachment.
Yeah.
No? Siya yun eh. Pero these are factors that were not maximized during the campaign. So, talagang very dismal din ang performance. And perhaps, baka makita rin natin, walang harmony of interest. Even yung Malacanang and, some of the candidates. So, people are somehow confused. What's the real message? So, kaya on the part of, the Duterte group, no, they capitalized that. So, they managed to, secure some seats, no, including, for example, although I'm not surprised, no, with the election of Senator-elect Marcoleta, because this time around, we also notice how, for example, the role of, a religious organization, no, supporting.
Number 6.
Yeah?
Let's be honest, that was quite a surprise.
Yeah. It's also
high.
very surprising. No?
Very high. Very high.
And perhaps the story was, there's some muscle flexing, especially for the local candidates, for you to get the support of a religious organization. So you have to tit for tat. So you have to endorse si Senator-elect Marcoleta for that matter. So yan yung mga something that will also medyo prominent uli yung role ng religious and politics in the Philippines. And there should be a dearth of research now and some further investigation. No?
Further investigation, but we don't have exit polls or legitimate exit polls. So obviously, these are educated guesses by us as social scientists to the best of our abilities. Just a while ago, I was checking the elections in Poland and the exit polls. And in every mature democracy, there's immediately exit polls. You can break down the numbers. Unfortunately, for some reason, wala pa tayo dyan or nawala tayo dyan.
I think in the past, meron tayo eh.
Until 2016.
Yeah, 2016 kasi I remember
SWS,
what happened when si FPG, di ba? Si exit poll pa yun eh. But after that, hindi ko alam what happened to our friends from different fields. Perhaps it's perhaps the preparations and the cost, etc.
The logistics and all, and the sponsors. Dr. Ona, I want to go to you because my understanding is that Marcoleta's performance maybe is a reflection of the organized religious groups rallying behind him, but he's very much aligning also with the great performance of Bongo and Bato. Bato was almost number 2. People forget that. Bongo was like way ahead of curve. He was like 27 million. And then Bam and Bato are dikit sila. Actually, at some point I was wondering if Bato will actually be number 2, right?
Yeah.
So it looks like nag-consolidate, hindi lang nag-overperform talaga yung Duterte-aligned camp. Is this really the sympathy vote? What are we looking at factors here?
Well, coming in, katulad nga nung sabi ni Dean Gary, I was a bit surprised, no? Because weeks before the election, we were looking at surveys, right? And the surveys would tell you that, it's 8-12 or 9-12 in favor of Alianza. But lo and behold, right, we have this this result. No? So, what triggered that? No? Perhaps, as you said, consolidation. Ako, my dirty mind would tell me na, maganda yung ground ops that happened, perhaps. No? And there's some truth to the observation of Dean Gary na perhaps the campaign of Alianza did not more or less harp on the issues. No? Like for instance, the issue of impeachment. This was not, kumbaga, drilled down.
Yeah.
The issue on the West Philippine Sea, for instance, hindi masyadong lumutang ito during the campaign. Ano? And of course, we saw the president during the different sorties, right? Talking about these things, formally, West Philippine Sea. But as far as follow-ups are concerned, we don't really see it.
That's a
Yeah.
problem.
And perhaps
Kaya campaign
yeah.
management was an issue, was a
yeah,
serious issue.
And voters would demand from administration some of the promises that were uttered by the president.
Well, that's why if I will ask, what is the campaign message of Alianza that really stick to the people? I don't know if you can remember that.
Yeah, I think the president was very clear about it
but
during the campaign. But again, no, it's up to the whole campaign itself, right?
So it's the role of the campaign manager.
That's
really a big problem.
I agree, totally.
And at the same time, siguro perfect storm din because sa isang banda, the administration was pinned down on the budget issue. And I think progressives and liberals were very much on that. And they had the moral ascendancy because, these were people who either worked for or supported Pinoy, Lenny, who are known for their good governance agenda. And then at the same time, you had this ICC sympathy rallying around the flag. Parang nagsama yung dalawa eh. So, you have to fight on two fronts bigla.
And to add to that, Richard, of course, we've been talking about disinformation activities, right? We have witnessed a lot of these during the campaign, right?
So it worked? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, there's no way to measure it, right? But you can see that there's a lot of disinformation activities happening, right? And most of it picturing, for instance, the aggrieved status of President Duterte when he was brought to The Hague, right? And this resonated among voters, I think. No, we can see through the results.
So you think that was partly inflated by networks of disinformation?
Yeah, I think so, right? Without any counter messaging.
Yun ang problem.
That's
from
a problem. From the opposite side, right? I think that image of President Duterte being brought to inside the airplane and being brought to the Hague.
So if I were from the Malacanang doon, or from the campaign of the Alianza, I would rather interview yung mga aggrieved parties, diba? Yung mga victims talaga. Dapat sila yung magsalita eh. Pero it was not capitalized.
I probably had more interviews with Attorney Cristina Conti, who represents the victims, than the entire other side of this equation, right? Like,
of course,
I didn't see any effort to amplify that message.
The president spoke about it, but that's not enough, right? It should be the whole campaign
should be a
echoing,
drum beat
echoing the same message.
Yeah, I mean, well, in fairness, dun sa hearing ni Amy Marcos, I mean, there was this part when Justice Crispin Remulla said nag-fail yung justice system, and he even mentioned na tinatamper yung evidence. Like that's content. Like for that's content.
Yung hindi na-amplify yan eh. Yung mga bagay na yan.
That's it. There was no follow-through again.
I think that's one of the problems, Richard. No? Like yung, for example, when Senator Amy and Vice President Sara put up this itim na kinabukasan, right? This campaign, right?
Itim campaign.
The itim campaign, right? But kita mo, what happened to the EJ case, right? What happened to those who died because of this drug war campaign?
Hindi ito sinagot eh. So yun yung mga ganang opportunity.
Easily, pwede mong gamitin yun eh, no?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think I got misquoted and got corrected by our friends here. Like, when I said, I said, it was a big mistake na walang follow-through after the ICC arrest. Because you already made parang you nag-swing hard ka na. Dapat may follow-up ka na eh. Pag
so, hindi na knockout. Walang
exactly.
knockout.
May knockdown, pero walang knockout. So, naka-recover yung kabila, then came back strong. I want to go back to that malign influence operations aspect. Because shortly before elections, may mga na-aresto, no? We saw the NBI relevant agencies saying na actually they caught people either directly from mainland or related to mainland. And before that already, we had this series of events whereby nahuli yung Chinese citizens close to military facilities in Malabak, whether yung mga military facilities. I mean, people who have like military-grade equipment with them. You cannot say you're just turista or like vlogger, right? You want to have access to those stuff. So, so like yun, for instance, bakit hindi na play up yun? Like, you're saying there's malign influence operations, but who is it helping, right? Like, then again, like, why is not coming out?
Yeah. Connect the dots na lang, Richard. And, these people who were arrested, for instance, they are all Chinese nationals, right? And the equipment that we're seized from them
And
are all
cash
high.
bag, parang
Yeah.
may cash pa eh.
These
may bag
are
of cash
equipment
pa eh.
that are high-grade equipment. You cannot buy it from the Philippines. So it was imported, right? And it's military grade. So connect the dots, di ba? Who are the types of people or groups
Yeah,
that will
yeah.
sponsor these kinds of activities?
And to what
right?
end? Which kind of candidates they want to win, right?
Like for instance, those who were arrested near Comelec, they were arrested with an IMSI catcher. These IMSI catchers are equipment that can mimic, for instance, cell phone signals.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
Right.
so tower signals. So, what are they doing with it, right?
What are they up to? Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, hindi rin ang play masyado yan. Like, you would see like bits and pieces, flashes in the pan, but no
Yeah.
one was putting it into a narrative na, this is part of
Ito
the
yung-
invasion, this
that's
is part
why-
of the proxy
yeah.
war.
Yun nga, the message itself, no? Medyo, tatanong ko sa iyo kanina, although the president made a marching order during the Lawag campaign when it was launched, pero after that, wala kang follow through at the same time. What really marked to the minds of the people, no? The message. So, yung mga yan, hindi na-amplify, hindi yan nagamit, and at the same time, iba-iba yung mga tono. So, it's like, yung band na sintunado lahat. So, definitely,
Yeah.
yung talaga wala ka lang harmony of interest ang mangyayari. So, in that particular sense, I think, may failure talaga. And it's very obvious, no? That, even the support, for example, yung possible alliances or possible supporter, yung naturally, syempre, yung mga congressman and governor. I don't know how local government units are utilized in the campaign.
Utilized,
No?
yeah.
So, yan din yung mga hindi nagamit. May problema ka na sa messaging, may problema pa sa ground operations. So, over who's to blame? Diba? So, yun yung...
Maybe
yun yung-
complacency could be blamed too, no? Because a lot of servers were saying easy 7, 8 yan. Although, it was always also weird kasi, let's not forget, dalawa doon ay alyansa, like Aimee and Camille were alyansa.
Yeah.
Camille was still kept within alyansa, but
In the last-
Aimee was...
even in the last hour.
Yeah, like how do you count that, right? Kasi technically, dapat 7 alyansa yan, di ba? And then may mga last...
Isa pa yan eh. Dapat chance.
Medyo sabog, di
I
ba?
mean, isa pa yung concern yan. I mean, if I were the campaign manager,
Yeah.
definitely, I have to put the spade on spade, di ba? So, ano talaga kayo, no? Which is which. Pero, yan, it can also create some confusion. Kasi parang, uy,
Yeah,
pwede pala na mamangka tayo sa dalawang ilog and it's allowed because nobody's telling us na hindi pala bawal na would you imagine, no?
Yeah.
The president,
Diba?
yung vice president, nagpa-endorse ka, samantalang merong threat na ginawa yung vice
Yeah,
president.
this is
to
the vice president. Well, someone say your brother was threatened by this, and you're
precisely.
Like, di ba?
So I can't even fathom that. So as well, no, it's merely politics for personal interest ang nangyari. So yun yung mga what you call this, no, tampok na obserbasyon natin for this election.
Ako naman mixed messages, di ba, Richard? If you look at what happened with Senator Aimee and
Camille
and
Villar.
Camille Villar, no? Parang, di ba, if you're just an observer, what's happening, di ba? One day they were saying bad things about Alianza, then the next day they're going to the opposite party, right? And ano ba talaga yung DNA of this campaign, right? And so I think that gave
Although
some,
in the past,
mixed
if you will
messages.
observe, di ba, meron talagang mga what's so-called ina-adapt yung mga candidates of other party. No, like
Yeah, pero-
in 2007. Pero kakaiba ito eh.
Iba
Kasi
ito eh.
very polarizing din talaga yung election nitong 2025 compared with
Supposedly,
other.
but that's my problem. Like, if you look at dapat battle lines were clear, no? Pero no one attack each other at the level of issues.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Wala kang
You-
debate eh. Isa pa yun.
exactly.
Like before.
Bato, I mean, like, yun nga, like, people are attacking BBM or Sara, but the candidates,
Among themselves. Yeah.
they were like all positive messaging.
Hindi ko rin alam kasi in the past, di ba, laging may comic-sponsored debate eh sa senatorial. So,
Yun pa, hindi pa
we
nangyari
no longer,
debates.
we have no opportunity to really listen to all
True.
the
Yung
platform
program,
of this.
oh.
Although
Yeah.
may mga ibang mga stations nag-sponsor parang interview, but interview is different from debate because
Iba siya eh.
debate, it shows your position on a specific issue. Like yan, sana may opportunity na itinanong ang West Philippines. Ano bang position nyo talaga yan? Lahat ng mga kandidato, kung in-sponsor yan sa ganun ng COMELEC, malaking bahagi yon. Yung role halimbawa ng China, itong sa malign influence natin. o sa ICC. Tanungin natin yung mga kandidato. Pero wala kang opportunity to do that.
But that's a legacy of 2022, di ba? When the unit team basically didn't bother to attend any legit debate. Let's be honest. I mean, no offense to that one debate that one of them attended, but none of the legitimate debates were attended. I mean, this is also the scary tendency we're seeing, no? Na purong basically nagiging pakit na lang elections natin. Like this was supposed to be the most polarized election. It is polarizing in its implication. We'll discuss the impeachment issue very shortly. And yet, if you look at, kung follow mo each of the candidate, yung isa food vlog, wala akong problema dyan. Yung isa edukasyon, wala akong problema dyan. Yung isa, the healthcare, okay, wala kayo. Okay naman sa akin yan. But you would have imagined, after everything that has happened and is about to happen, medyo siguro magpapalitan ng konting, wala eh. Not even like fireworks, di ba?
Yeah.
What do you think,
Naging
Dr. Ona?
naging parang
Pa-safe lahat?
pa-safe lahat, and it became parang Marcos versus Duterte.
Rather than issue driven.
Rather than being issue driven. And nakita naman ito, di ba? We saw this during the campaign. Ginamit nga yung for instance yung ICC arrest. And hindi ko makalimutan yung itim campaign eh. Ito talaga yung, yan yung sinasabi ninyo. Maitim ang kinabukasan, di ba? Against your brother, di ba?
But it is, again, we don't have exit polls, but based on the numbers you've seen, Amy did very well in Solid North. So it looks like at the end of the day, it still went back, the pendulum swung. I saw these posters of still BBM and Amy in the North. Sabi ko, what's going on? Is it a good cop, bad cop? Like, in the end, balik din sa basics eh, di ba? Like, Ken, it was a very surreal election. The more I think about this election, the weirder it comes out to me. One of the immediate implications of the election was, will it produce a composition or constellation of forces that would favor or disfavor the impeachment trial at the Senate? So I think the first line of reading would be, mukhang this work more for Duterte's, right? In a sense that now it's easier to imagine getting 9 votes to block a conviction is much easier pala than people had expected. But I would have argued that even if Alianza won 8 or 9, I mean, how loyal are Wait, like, this is not a real political party. Let's be honest about it. At the end of the day, it will be 24 republics in the Senate, right? But nevertheless, one reading is, this favors Sara more than the other side of equation, even if the other side of equation is saying, ayoko nito, whatever is that other side. But there's other school of thought also saying, bakit parang ngayon ayaw nila ng trial to begin with? Maybe they're scared of even a trial because even if you block conviction, if the trial is damaging enough, that is the numbers game, the public opinion, the 2028 game. What is your read of that? Because as we speak, this is early June, so hindi pa tayo tapos sa 19th Congress, but worry ng lahat, including incoming Congresswoman Leila De Lima, who could be joining, is that parang dinidribble na ito, and there could be a dereliction of duty on the part of Senate.
Well, I totally agree with your observations, Richard. In fact, isa pa nga sa mga, for lack of better term, medyo disgusting and dismay what's happening right now, yung ating mga senator-elect ay very obvious na sa kanilang mga posisyon. So, mukhang hindi na nakakalimutan nila yung kanilang constitutional duty that part of their role as a senator is being part of the impeachment court. So, sana may konting pakipot naman. Judges. Kasi senator judges ka eh. So, sana may konting pakipot naman. Pero nangyayari, from the very beginning, ang dami ng mga senador ngayon, mga senator-elect, nagsasalita na that, we will not support the impeachment for acquittal. In fact, at sasabi nila, manatili pa rin Vice President si Vice President Sara until 2028. So, parang, teka muna, medyo naman tayo ng konti. Medyo pakipot naman tayo ng konti. But it just so happened
but don't you think they're doing that because they feel the wind is in the sails of one side of the equation and they're looking at their own political interests?
Well, either, if going to bid for acquittal or conviction, the point is, as a senator, you have a constitutional duty. I think that we need to remind our beloved and, great senators of this republic that they have a constitutional duty and they should not abandon it. So, therefore, being an obvious, a senator judges at least show some impartiality, but we are not longer observing this because from when I think when VP Sara was impeached, we already listened and heard some senators who said that we will not support for will support for VP Sara, etc. So very obvious, despite the fact na may sabi, halimbawa si Senate President na, can we just not discuss it muna in public?
Right.
Because it's improper, impropriety yung mga yun,
Just to be clear, the word is forthwith, right? That's
Yeah.
I don't know. Forthwith
meaning
means
nun?
4 months. Forthwith means forever or never. It's quite crazy. I mean, I we
Ano bang meaning ng forthwith?
like we
diba?
could have
Dapat
gone
in
back to
haste.
Oxford and here 10 times and we would have got the meaning of the word
Pwede
forthwith.
bang i-google na lang?
So, yun nga, like, should there be people power? I mean, should there be some sort... Kasi the last time we saw the Senate, yung even blocking the envelope being opened. Like, the trial happens, everything... But that was damaging enough for people to come out and say, we have lost faith in you guys doing your duty.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Yeah,
use people
definitely.
power. Do you
Definitely.
think that could be again, we're early June, so maybe by the time this comes out, there could be developments. But do you think a people power situation could be possible if Senate is brazenly having their election of duty?
I think it's too early to tell now, no? But definitely that's a possibility, right? But Dean Gary mentioned yung responsibility of the senators and constitutional duty. But I'm going in now pointing to the fact that the people deserves to know as well, right? They deserve to know what are these articles and what are the evidence that the House is presenting that will implicate the Vice President, right? And if the senators continue to deny, for instance, and continue to politic around these issues, then they're not serving the public in this sense, right? They're doing away with the public interest part. And if that is so, Richard, pwedeng mangyari yung sinasabi mo, di ba? If the Senate will continue to deny the public yung information or the knowledge about what has happened with the transactions of the Vice President, then that can be a possibility.
Just to be clear, SWS came up with a service earlier.
88%,
which is
right?
saying almost 9 out of 10 Filipinos want
88%.
accountability.
almost 9.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that again, this is interesting because there are also surveys saying ang taas ng trust rating ng mga Dutertes, including someone who will never be coming back to the country anytime soon. But whatever, right? I mean, the point is people are not saying that just because we like these guys, they can do whatever they want. And this is a constitutional democracy. Hindi ito popularity contest last time I checked, right?
Yeah. At nakakapagtaka rin dito, they should see it as an opportunity for the Vice President,
Yeah, that's a good
right?
point.
To clear her
Good point.
name.
Yeah.
Clear her name. If she sees the House during the time na the Quadcom was doing their hearing, that is not a good venue for her, then perhaps the Senate will be, right? With, a handful of senators in her pocket, right? That can be a good venue for
yun
her.
yung sabi ko kanina rin, I would like to point out. I mean, impeachment is a sui generis. No? I mean,
Sabagay.
definitely a class of its own. So I think it's very important that senators also must be reminded. No, this is not a simply a legislative function. No, and it's only in a lifetime that you have this kind of case. So you really have to fulfill your mandate. No, as being elected by the Filipino voters. So, kasama yan eh. So, pero kung yan ay simpleng you will ignore, sabihin mo, hindi, i-acquit na namin. I-acquit nyo sa tamang proseso. Huwag nyo sabihin pero simulan naman natin. Sana yung pwede ba simulan naman natin? Kasi duty niyan eh.
Ako, aside from mandate, yung idea ng accountability, Richard, di ba? How do we account these people, right? If we jail Filipinos for just robbing 20 peso worth of merchandise or 50 peso worth of merchandise, di ba? We bring them to the city jail, di ba? We're talking about millions, hundreds of millions here, right? Do we give the Vice President a free pass, right? Simply because she has the numbers? I don't think so, right? What would that show?
So
Our people.
the term would be impunity, right?
That's it.
What would that do to our institutions? Wouldn't it further damage or undermine people's faith? I mean, we just had these amazing elections whereby you had many good surprises.
Yeah.
These amazing elections whereby the Gen Z and younger generation, it seems, are expressing their will to some sort of difference, change, whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, we also see in a lot of surveys, I think Octa survey, like for instance, also showed marami rin Pilipino na demobilize or they're having doubts. There are also the Pew surveys that show internationally faith in democratic institutions are low. And maybe that explains why there's an attraction to populism also, right? Or anti-system candidates, to be more specific about this. Are you worried that, okay, siguro hindi mangyari yung people power because, we have had too many
Pwede namang mangyari yun,
Pwede
Richard.
mangyari yung demobilization, mawala
Yeah,
ng pag-asa ng tao sa sistema natin, mawala ng respeto ng tao sa Senado natin.
That's the reason why we need to hear it, right? We need to hear the evidence. The Senate needs to get its act together.
And in the
And,
past, normally
open
talaga,
the process.
ang impeachment as well is an education process.
Yeah.
Di ba? So,
Sabagay, yeah.
baka pwede rin,
Each generation.
bago tayo pumasok sa people power, mag-people's education muna tayo. Kaya ma-educate natin dito. Balikan natin ano ba yung mga trabaho ng mga constitutional bodies, ano ba trabaho ng mga impeachable officials. At sabi nga kanya, hindi to free pass. It's really an issue of accountability. So, let's conduct the impeachment because this will be an opportunity also to clear the good vice president. Kung talagang yung akusasyon sa kanya, ay wala talagang batayan.
Yeah, if she has all the supporting documents or evidence, why not? Let it out. I mean,
Importante, simulan na. Dapat masimulan din talaga to.
oo.
What you said, Dean, is very important on the issue of public education. And what's interesting is that, like my generation, it was the Corona impeachment, which was like, what's going on? I was literally working as a staff in the Congress, and it's like, lahat nag-uusap. So naging curious kami, what is the Constitution? What is the constitutional democracy? A lot of people also came of age during the EDSA II, the impeachment ni Estrada. So this could have become, or should become rather, a venue for, compelling people to step up in terms of their political literacy, their familiarity with the Constitution. So actually, they can go hand in hand.
Ang term
Kasi
gani
maging
Gramsci,
curious ang tao
stands for mismo eh.
Exactly.
Di ba?
Right.
I mean, because ang historical block ngayon, for example, ay yung Duterte narrative. So we need an alternative. So from Gramsci third, so social forces, there should be a cross-class alliances of social forces to change that narrative. So importante magkaroon talaga ng
Counter-hegemonic.
counter-hegemonic
narrative,
collective thinking, at yun yung possible na pwedeng ibigay sana ng impeachment kung may paliwanag maigito sa mga tao, and of course marimay nga dun sa issues talaga ng accountability ng ating mga
So
impeachable officials.
counter-impunity block, let's just call it that way. Like, yung mga tao na pagod na with getting away with EJK, getting away with all sorts of questionable practices. Now, there's the other side of this equation, right? Before I go back to the progressive opposition, the administration. So, honestly, I found the president's, at least initial response, a little bit confounding. We can always make theories about maybe there's something Machiavellian behind this, that there's a fox and a lion there. But I just felt it was weird for the president to immediately talk about reconciliation and immediately reinstate his opposition to the impeachment and all of that. But nevertheless, I kind of see where the cabinet revamp was coming from. Now, as we speak, the revamp is ongoing process. And initially, many people were very critical of the first phase, let's just call it. So anong revamp doon? Diba? Parang nag-recycle lang. And then the next thing we know, actually tinatanggal yung mga holdovers from Duterte administration. Let's just call it Bernardo Guevara, for instance. A couple of other people are in there. Where do you think this revamp should go to give the president, well, he didn't get exactly the mandate he was looking for, but at least the political momentum so that he's not lame duck and he actually gets things done in his... so this is kind of a constructive critique of what the president should do in the next year or so. So para may legacy talaga siya in the second part of his administration.
Well, ako, yung unang tanong mo kanina, yun sa interview, for example,
Reconciliation
ni President about reconciliation, medyo parang ill-advised ata rin yun. So, hindi yun nag-create ng magnanimity on his part, no? Na mabuti siya. Pero kasi, again, if you say reconciliation, for example, dapat maliwanag na ito ay based dun sa justice.
Right.
Yun yung, so, alam na ba paano napasok yung tanong na yan eh. Sayang yung opportunity yata to explain really on his side, yung kanyang mga gustong gawin. No? Medyo naging off lang yun sa tanong na yan. Then talk about cabinet revamp. Again, it's very important to have really a resetting of the Marcos administration. Hindi lang dahil sa election result. No? I think even before the election, talagang makikita mo, may mga ahensya ng gobyerno that really needs to work very hard and and deliver results. Kasi yun ang ng mga tao eh. Halimbawa, yung pangako for example niya on presyo ng mga bilihin. Kasi issue yan sa primary concern, fighting the inflation. Di ba? That's
number one, always an urgent
always
issue.
the number, controlling the inflation, fighting the inflation, etc. Pero ano bang ginagawa, for example, na kanyang economic team to do that? So
Yeah.
medyo, yan yung
Which
mga...
is still the same team.
Yeah.
Last time I checked. It
Oo.
hasn't changed. So,
yan yung mga concern. So, yung cabinet revamp, kaya nga revamp, I mean, it's really an opportunity to do some major changes, some tectonic shift, to become more responsive, to become more delivered-oriented results, no? Rather than simply accommodating politically all your, victors,
yeah.
no? So, medyo maganda yung intention, kaya lang parang kapos. Parang, for me, medyo kinakapos
So what do you want to
ako.
see? Let's go particular. Like if you were to advise the president, obviously just to be clear, we're all independent scholarship.
Yeah.
Like, but if you were to advise the president, because it looks like we all agree na may parang walang center of gravity dito eh. Like, like who is like Bongo or who is like the chief advisor. Like, the reason I'm saying this is because I understand the challenge for President BBM.
Yeah.
He came into power as part of an alliance. That alliance not only fell apart, he's now like 20 to 40% of the population could be against him because they're siding with the others. That's a tough situation. BBM was not part of national politics. So he doesn't have that his own team, kumbaga, diba? Unlike President Arroyo, who had 10 years in office, or the Aquinos, who have many sympathetic technocrats who are willing to work for him. He's quite an isolated, besieged prince, if I can put it in the Machiavellian terms, right? So what should that prince do in sovereign do in the next 2 years?
They mentioned, even si E.S. Bersamin sinasabi niya, based on a performance review.
Right.
So hindi ko alam kung seryoso ba yung performance review.
Metrics.
Meron bang metrics na ginamit? Meron bang, did he, for example, instructed si E.S. Bersamin, sige magsabi kayo ng mga performance paano makita talaga natin? And I'm sure dapat yung KPI, etc. Kasi sa gobyerno naman, di ba, kasama sa mga hinihingi nila every year dahil they have this annual planning, etc. So, hindi natin maigi, no? Tapos, sana bingis din yun sa ano ba yung mga major concerns ng mga Pilipino ngayon, no? Na hindi tutugunan ng current administration. And from then, that will be very helpful, no, for the president to make this, revamp more relevant and more acceptable, no, sa mga tao. But of course, we understand hindi yan madali. Definitely, if you are the president, it's not really easy.
No, it's not easy. He has
to simply
you
get out. You just. It's that. But of course, sabi nga, ang importante rito, results. Results oriented dapat ang intention ng revamp And somehow
is it results or is the appearance of results? Because one thing we learned from Duterte era is the performative governance part. Like Duterte's admin was getting a lot of buck for like imaginary bang, right? Like
can imagine.
Wala naman ginagawa to, pero ang dami kong nakita na social media, di ba? Like again, disinformation.
Yeah, ako, if I may add, I totally agree with Din Gary, na may mga issues that hold prominence, when it comes to being addressed. But ako kasi, as an observer lang, parang nagsunod-sunod yung mga bad news, regarding the administration, right? Aside from food inflation, scandals here and there, pati yung crime
Siya pa yun.
Diba? Yung rise in crime, And, as a scholar of malign influence, parang I have this, thinking, is this an organized thing?
It looks like sabotage.
Is this an organized thing against the administration? But, of course, we do not want to, say na, there are no legitimate issues anymore, right? Meron pa rin, food inflation is there, self-rated poverty and hunger is there, And these are all legitimate issues that the administration needs to address, But sabi ko nga, as a scholar of malign influence, these are vulnerabilities, that these malign actors can use against a target, against an adversary, and sabi nga natin, the National Security Council has been warning us for like a year or so against these types of activities. And during the elections, merong mga reports about it, right?
Ako pala, dagdag pa doon sa revamp. Baka ang revamp hindi lang dapat doon sa cabinet level, sa secretary level.
Sub-cabinet.
Even sa mga USEC nito.
Directors,
I think it should also be performance review. I-assess din talaga maigi. Kasi minsan, may ma-experience tayo, that they have a very good trust and program of the national government, pero hindi ito nakakascade sa baba. So may mga baraka sa ilalim. So dapat yun, yung mga political appointee, dapat yung titingnan din natin.
Tsaka, if I may add, Richard, mahilig kasi yung mga Filipino sa action eh. Di ba? Kailangan ipakita ni
Performance
Presidente.
dapat eh.
Na ano siya, no? Na siya talaga yung may hawak ng reins of the government. Hinahanap ng mga tao yun.
Decisiveness.
For instance, if nag-promise siya ng 20 pesos per kilo na rice at hindi to na-deliver, sino ang accountable doon? Di ba? Should be the Secretary of Agriculture, di ba? Bakit hindi mo naibigay yung pangako ko na 20 pesos? No? Kung mataas ang crime rate, for instance, bakit mataas ang crime rate? Bakit maraming smuggling? The President claims na food inflation is being caused by smuggling. Bakit walang naaaresto ng mga smugglers?
DOC yan.
Yan, no? So, kailangan,
kaya sasabihin natin, na hindi lang sa cabinet level dapat ang revamp.
I would say there are two structural challenges for this admin. One is they came right after Duterte. So sanay ang tao sa isang presidente na nagsasalita until 4 a.m., madrama, istorya. No, I'm saying, that's a tough act to follow.
Of course,
I'm critical of that kasi alam ko performative yan. But let's be honest, for an average voter, that looks like a very sympathetic, relatable president. Ang taas ng standards, to put it that way. And the second, let's not forget, for 10 years, marami sa ating kababayan pumasok doon sa algorithm ng pro-Duterte universe. So the moment, you know how I know that? You know how I know that? I know people who are no longer Duterte supporters, they regret it. But still their information comes from the same. Sabi, Richard, ang taas na daw yung crime sa, kunyari, based abroad. Saan ko nakuha? Yung pala, andun pa rin doon sa rabbit hole eh. So, kumbaga, ang laking structural disadvantage sa information space yan eh. So, ang laki na kailangan mo i-step up na gagawin eh.
Yan, nakita natin yan sa mga OFWs, di ba? Mga pro-Duterte content yung nakukuha nila. No? But tama ka, no? May ganong environment na which, kumbaga, handicap yung administration when they came in. No? But again, that's not an excuse.
No, it just means you have to step up.
You have to step up. No? If you have to double or triple your effort, why not? But in fairness to the president, yung first year niya, di ba? We were all optimistic when he began appointing, technocrats into the cabinet, di ba? And
his West Philippine Sea policy is very good.
Yung pivot to the West, di ba? Yung foreign policy.
Traditional partners,
traditional partners.
diversification.
No? But of course, after that, people were wanting more.
One last thing before we end this episode. Mahabang usapan yan, but inevitably, because basically 20 to 40% na in the Duterte camp. The reason I say 20 to 40, because there's a soft support, there's a core support, right? Let's just say for the sake of our 20 to 40%. So basically, there's that 60% that the president can work for his trust and performance, right? Is reaching out some sort of Team Pilipinas with the liberals and progressive one way for him to also move forward, to say, I know you don't like me because of, I don't know, my name, my family's legacy. I know you didn't vote for me. I know you may not be 100% convinced with what I do. But one thing we can agree on is that ayaw natin bumalik sa ganitong klase ng foreign policy. Mahal natin ang bayan natin. Do you think that could be also one rallying cry for him? That at the end of the day, we're Team Philippines?
I have really no problem with that suggestion. And in fact, if I have the opportunity to contribute in that project, I will definitely help. Kasi sabi ko nga, importante ngayon yung cross-class alliances. Coming from that framework. Importante sa akin yun. And of course, sana mapakinggan din natin maigi yung ating mga kaibigan in other political groups, that there should be a unifying factor come 2028. If we continue to support human rights, promoting accountability, good governance, I think it's about time na magsama-sama itong mga grupong ito. Kung ayaw natin bumalik sa dating sitwasyon, na kung saan halos ipamigay na tayo sa China, maraming patayan talaga every now and then. So talagang there should be this type of political movement, a political project. At least may fundamental talaga.
May baseline na anong ayaw natin balikan.
Yung maitim na
nakaraan,
hindi kinabukasan yung maitim.
Dark ages.
Ako naman, mahaba pa yung 3 taon, Richard. Long time. And the president should not be classed as a lame duck president at this point.
But that's the attack of, that's self-interested attack by some groups,
of course, sasabihin nila yun. Diba? But mahaba yung 3 taon. And I agree with you that there are common points of cooperation na pwedeng mangyari between, the administration and the other forces, right?
Patriotic forces. Let's just call it
Patriotic
that
forces.
way, yeah.
But Team Pilipinas is there, di ba? Gusto pa ba natin yung nagpapatayan, 30,000 Filipinos killed in just 6 years? Do we want that? Do we want our fishermen to be abused,
Yeah, again.
robbed of their rights in our maritime
And then you're
territories?
present lawyering for the other side.
Yeah, and the entry of Pogo. Di ba? Gusto pa ba
100%.
natin yan? Do we want a lot of Alice Guos
Isa pa yun.
becoming local government officials? Do we want that? If the answer is no, then I think,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well,
Team Pinas is there.
we never know. Maybe in the next cabinet revamp, maybe. I'm kidding aside on that note. Thank you very much, Dean, for this
Salamat ulit,
fantastic
Richard.
conversation, and Dr.
Richard,
Ona for this
thank you.
fantastic
Thank you.
conversation. Catch us again next week here on One News. You can also check out the long conversation on Spotify and YouTube. I'm Richard Hidaria, and that was The View from Manila. We're One News, all sides, all the time.